Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Town of Fairfield Affordable Housing Committee meeting of Thursday, October 13th, 2021. We're meeting via Zoom at 7:02 p.m. For the record, Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. We also have with us Committee Chairman Steve Grathwall, committee members Cindy Samarco, Carrie Mackover, Joanne Zonka, Nancy Lyons, and it looks like Helene Daly has joined us as well. We have our recording secretary, Gretchen Gerthner, and we also have Herb Limecooler, Bob Elwinger, and Jackie Page on the call as well from the public. Did I miss anyone?
I think you got them all.
I think we got everyone. Okay. Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for joining tonight. Just a reminder, because of the format, that only the members of the commission can ask questions. If we're able to towards the end, we'll try to open it up. But if you have questions along the way, you can always email them to myself or to Mark Barnhart, and we'll address them either during the meeting or tomorrow to the meeting. With that said, I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes from our September 9th meeting.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Nancy.
I second.
Oh, Cindy.
Cindy or Carrie?
Either one.
It was a tie. Both.
Okay, good. Questions, comments, any discussion? Not seeing any. Then all those in favor of approval, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Good. Okay. Oh. Nobody's talking in the background.
Background noise. So if you want to mute your phone, that'd be great, or your screen somehow.
Yep. Maybe 5485 might be it.
Yeah, that's probably Bob. I'll mute it, and then he can always ask to unmute or chat or something.
Okay, good. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so first item on the agenda is an update on the Parkview Comments / Navy housing redevelopment.
So I just I'll note for the record too, that we're scheduled to have a joint planning meeting with members of the Planning and Zoning Commission next week on the 19th, the Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. So I'll be sending out a meeting notice and agenda for that. Glenn Chalder will be joining us to provide a presentation to both commissions, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Excuse me, Mark, is that going to be via Zoom or?
Via Zoom, yeah.
Okay.
I was asked to do that. So I think most town boards and commissions continue to meet virtually for the time being, including our land use boards and other most of our elected boards, to my knowledge. So we haven't gotten the green light. Part of it is technological. They're attempting to merge the best of both worlds to allow for both in person, but for those who want to call in remotely and participate remotely, to have a meeting room that's conducive to that setup. So they're making some modifications to some of our meeting rooms to allow for that. And so I think that's what we're until those changes have been made. I think there's a couple places, mostly at the Board of Ed, that do allow for that type of interface, but they're trying to modify some of the other meeting room spaces to allow that to occur. So Parkview Comments, this does have a bearing on our other main topic for this evening, in that, we have most recently purchased 409 Quincy Street, which is the fourth such unit within the Parkview Comments development, the intent, as you recall, is to aggregate some of these existing lots, hopefully in close proximity or preferably contiguous to one another. And we might be able to then put together and solicit development partners, bring additional investment dollars into the deal and redevelop the site, both to preserve the existing units, to resolve longstanding flood compliance issues. They're in a flood zone and they're at the wrong flood elevation, so it does undermine their affordability in terms of having to provide for expensive flood insurance policies and limits what can be done with the property. But also there's an opportunity to create additional affordable housing units there. So while we did receive approval from town boards, the Board of Finance and RTM, to issue short-term notes to finance the acquisition of these units and recapitalize the fund. At the moment, all those purchases, the 4 lots that we've purchased to date, have been funded out of the Housing Trust Fund completely. So, round numbers, we purchased 4 lots at $300,000 each. That's $1.2 million. We also funded the Affordable Housing Plan update partially through the Housing Trust Fund, which was another $15,000. And then, we have generated roughly $1.5 million to date, both between fees, inclusionary zoning fees since the inception of the program 3 years ago, as well as some rental income from a lease back of some of those units within the Parkview Comments development. And one donation of $100, which is also in our fund, which I have to give special recognition. So if you add all that up, we have roughly a balance of a little less than $250,000, and we're now, in the trust fund from a cash perspective. Although we do have borrowing capacity to go beyond that, but we do have to repay that, or have the ability to repay that at some point in the future. So that's where we stand. We just did, as I said, we purchased 409. So we have 4 lots, 350, 362, 409, and 385, all on Quincy Street. All of them, importantly, are conforming duplex building lots. So they're over 9,000 square feet. So more or less as of right, we could build duplexes in their place. But again, we're hopeful that we might be able to do something a little bit more robustly there if we can, while still being sensitive to the neighborhood. And I'm working on developing an RFQ to go out to the development community to bring some expertise as well as equity into the deal. So that's where we are. I have had conversations with 2 adjoining property owners, who neither of whom are, while they're interested in selling their property, they're not prepared to do so right this minute, which is just fine by me, and presumably all of us as well. But we also have one other unit on the other side that unfortunately is in foreclosure, and I've been in discussions with the attorney representing the bank about the possibility of getting that property as well. So there are some additional opportunities there, but they're not really ready to come to fruition, and we have other matters before us. But happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
I've got a couple.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, so the 4 houses that we've already control, how many of them are side by side?
So 350 and 362 are contiguous to one another. 385 and 409 are on the other side of the street, and there's an in-between lot between the 2 of those.
All right, so 2 out of the 4 are
Right.
contiguous, okay. And the one in between, 409 and 380, they're,
She is not inclined to do anything, and she's retired and she wants to stay there, and we're happy that she can do that. It's a shame in a way that we have this within a flood zone, because these are great homes for folks that might be needing something at grade, that may have some difficulty getting around, because they're great for that standpoint. They're nice starter type housing, but unfortunately they're at elevation 9.7 and the flood elevation in the area is 11. So we would have to at least do 1 foot over that and then some. So at some point, and again, they were all built back in the late 1950s as military housing, so they're quite modest and they're not the most energy efficient. Some have made some improvements to them, but the thought is that eventually we would knock them down and build new at the correct flood elevation.
and the woman that has that house in between, she couldn't be encouraged to, like, if we found another spot that she could move to?
Well, maybe I really didn't. Right now, what we've done is we've only worked with individuals that are ready to move on in their life. Most of these are the original. All but one are the original owners of these units, so they've been there for many years, and they're at a point where it no longer meets their needs and they're ready to move on. So I think we want to be in a position to do that. And initially our thought was that we were going on the other side of the street. Things came up on the reverse side, and just wanted to at least make those available. But again, we have limited resources at the moment. So that's where the borrowing capacity comes in. But on the other hand, we do have, if we take that money and borrow it, then we have an obligation eventually to put it back or pay it back. So.
And speaking of the money then, when would the funds be replaced into the trust fund?
Well, we have authority right now. We essentially have that capacity now. We just haven't charged it out. And with bands, these are bond anticipation notes within a short period of time, typically 3. You can roll them over from year to year until the project's more or less completed, and then you have to either pay them off entirely or convert them to long-term debt.
Mm-hmm.
And the initial plan was to pay them off at the end of the rollover period, from proceeds of the sale or some other permanent financing. My concern would be, and I was talking to both the CFO and before the meeting to Carrie, certainly one way that we ensure affordability is by, obviously you need to subsidize these things in some fashion. One way to effectively subsidize them is to provide the land essentially for free, for which then you can develop the project. If you do that, and that's the subsidy, it's kind of hard to repay that and repay the notes from that. So I've been reluctant to tap into that at the time being without a full repayment plan. Our original development pro forma that we ran, which was based on the work that we did with mutual housing, was predicated on our ability to get about $1.5 million from the state, in effect providing that subsidy to offset the acquisition cost. But that's far from guaranteed. So for now we're okay. But again, if additional opportunities present themselves either here or elsewhere in town, we may have to borrow against that authorization or future. We do generate roughly $400,000 in income each year from inclusionary zoning fees, or at least that's been our track record in the 3 years that we've established the program. So, but that doesn't go very far if you're buying lots at $200,000 or $300,000 each. So that's kind of long. I'm just want to provide the universe here so we understand how we're going to kind of put this thing together.
Well, but let me ask, is there like a chit in the fund? I mean, is there an obligation to repay the money?
There will be if we avail ourselves of that. Yes.
Well, that's a different, there's not currently an obligation, you're saying.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
we haven't tapped into that.
Yeah. Okay, and the,
Oh, Carrie, you want to add your little thought there for the record? I mean,
Just for the record, I just posted as a chat another reason to consider a community land trust so that we can raise money from the community at large, because I'm sure that there are people in this community who would donate to a community land trust as a 501c3 to buy lots, because each time we develop an affordable housing lot that is not inclusionary zoning, we're not raising that denominator. We're just building affordable housing, which is getting us closer to what we need to get to. I think Glenn had that in one of his suggestions for us to consider, but we've never really talked about it in full. I did find online, just on Shelter Force, a description of a community housing trust for West Marin County out in California, another affluent community, but in their description, they were looking for an executive director. You could kind of see what these things do and how they're set up, and I'll send that to anybody who might want to see it. I'll send it to you, Mark, and you can send it out or whatever.
okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I have at the moment. Well, no, I got one more thing. I read something about Sacred Heart or Fairview U is looking for a waiver in order to do, or approvals to do some additional housing within the campus.
Yes. Both universities have been making fairly significant investments in their facilities, on-campus facilities, and Sacred Heart, especially with regard to new residence halls. For a time being, they were housing some of their students in hotels off campus. So they've added new residence halls, and I think I just saw plans for another one as well.
Yeah. And that all inures to the benefit of the trust fund at some point.
It does. When they pull a building permit, they get approved and they pull a building permit, there is an inclusionary zoning fee in connection with that.
Okay. I'm sorry. So one last question then. Do you have a date in the future when we might expect something to actually happen down at Parkview Commons?
Well, my thinking is that we will go out to RFQ now and within the next 30 days. Hopefully, get a good response from the development community. Continue to have conversations with the Department of Housing as to the ability or their willingness to provide some financing potentially down the road. And my thought was we would have a development agreement in place by early next year, go through permitting and design, and then hopefully construction the year following. So that would be kind of the time frame. And in the event that there might be other opportunities to pick up additional properties, a couple of the individuals I've spoken to are interested, but not kind of thinking along the lines of this time next year. So again, given where we are, that seems perfectly fine with me. We can continue to have those conversations, and then I'll have to have to manage units with tenants in them, which is what I'm currently doing.
I'm a little nervous about having such a large percentage of the trust fund tied up into one potential development. This is what, 70 to 80% of the dollars.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Yep.
But I hope that people understand that it takes a while to do developments, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You know, it's not a 90-day process. So that's all. But thank you for the update. Are there any other questions for Mark? Okay.
Eileen's shaking her head. She can't take it. You're on mute.
Just
I
met
had
no
to say
questions.
that.
I just met no questions.
ADU update?
Well, we do have some representatives from the Fairfield Senior Advocates on the line with us today, and they've done some really great work in developing some pamphlets and brochures and other marketing collateral around ADUs, and have provided me with print files so that we can make them available. And I'm in the process of getting some copies made, as well as putting them online. I think I want to thank Herb and Bob and Carrie for all their work. I think they met with Jim and Emmeline and myself to go through them, several different drafts, and made some great changes. I'll make sure I send out a link to them. I'll put them up on the website so you can take a look. But I think they're really provide a good backdrop. And then we had talked about doing a workshop, but I think what we had anticipated doing is maybe waiting until the dust settles on what the Planning and Zoning Commission will do vis-a-vis the state statutes, the changes that the state made with regard to ADUs. I suspect, based on the conversation that we had with the Planning and Zoning Commission, or that they had planning session, that they will opt out. But you know, there was a lot of conversation about whether or not they can go further than the changes that they already enacted, and there seemed to be consensus around that. So the reasons for their opting out are that they don't want to universally apply ADUs to all residential districts in town, including the beach district, which is not the same thing as the beach area. It's a designated residential zoning district along Fairfield Beach Road. So it's a very small district. It includes, you know, fairly environmentally sensitive areas that are in a high wave velocity zone. So there's some concern about allowing ADUs in that area. And there was some concern about whether or not they should permit ADUs in multifamily zones, even where you have a single family residence. So those seem to be the bigger issues, but for the most part, our current regulations mirror in large part that of the states, with a couple of notable exceptions. And again, I think where the commission seemed to be going with it was actually going beyond the changes that they already had made to make it even more permissive to establish ADUs in town. So all that's a good thing, but I think until we figure out exactly what that is, maybe it makes sense to hold off on, and we're getting into the holiday season anyway, so we'll look towards next year. Is that an accurate summary, Carrie?
That's accurate. And you know, between Halloween, Election Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the Delta variant, the feeling was that to try and do anything right now was not such a good idea, that we would do it in January or February sometime after the dust cleared, as Mark said. But I just want to specifically say that Bob Ellwanger did a great job with these brochures. They're really beautiful.
They are gorgeous.
Very
Yeah.
readable, and they're terrific. So Jim was happy, Emmeline was happy, everybody was happy. So that was good.
I'll be sure to put them up on the website and send you all links so you can see Bob's work. It really was tremendous. And as I said, we're gonna get some print copies made so we can have them available at the counter
And what about connecting with the Board of Realtors? And
We could definitely provide them information as well. I think we'll be reaching out. I haven't done so yet, but my intent would be reach out to the Board of Realtors to talk about our affordable housing plan update. And we can certainly include in that conversation ADU regs as well.
Okay. And I did circulate an article that was in the New York Times about ADUs, among other things. Thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting where it was placed. It was in the Sunday paper, but not the real estate section. It was in the business section, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, it was a very interesting article, and had just a very different geographic area from us, but the issues are the same. They're just solved in different ways, or not solved in different ways. It looked like where they were in San Diego was flat and desert-like, and makes, in a way, life a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay. Old business updates. Mark, I'll put it back to you.
So I did send out, I think in the packet, the update to the moratorium status report. There's been a couple of changes. The project on Oldfield was approved, but much scaled back from what it was originally proposed at. It was originally a 17-unit development, and it was approved as a 10-unit 830G development. So that was one change. We have two other projects that will be referred to a public hearing date, uncertain as to when those will be held. 26 Beacon Square is a 26-unit 830G development proposed, and 83 Castle Avenue is a proposed 44-unit 830G development, both of whom will be heard probably later this year, or perhaps even early next, depending on their schedule. Chick-fil-A seems to be taking up most of the Planning and Zoning Commission's time these days, so they're on their fourth night of public hearing, going for a record. Everything else, there's two projects under construction. The one downtown on Umpqua Road, which I think you sent around some photos.
Yeah.
There's a project, I think the foundation walls were put in on the Black Rock Turnpike, the smaller 23-unit development. And that's pretty much it in terms of we have had a conversation with regard to the Thorpe Street property, which was approved for a 150-unit age-restricted independent living facility, but that was to be done with the Jewish home. And our information is that's not going forward, that they are again looking to shop the site to other developers that may be looking to do something comparable, but nothing definitive at this time.
And Mark, what about 980 High Street and the Bronson Road projects?
So Bronson Road was approved on appeal, and they have the right and ability to pull a building permit at any point, and they have had that ability for the last year or so, but have made no move to do so. So that's still out there. We don't have any particular understanding of what their time frame is at this point. 980 High Street, I think you saw the court decision that upheld the Inland Wetland Commission's denial of the application, and they can simply, it was denied without prejudice, so they could refile by addressing the commission's concerns, which was to demonstrate that there were no reasonable alternatives to some of the impacts that they perceived as far as wetlands were concerned. So I think the indication is that they will resubmit to inland wetlands in the near future.
And the Mill Hill property that the Housing Authority has?
Well, the Housing Authority has had an offer on the table. The church has not accepted that offer. They've been entertaining other development proposals for the site. Frankly, some of those development proposals are, in my view, worse than what the Housing Authority was proposing, because they're providing an equivalent amount of density, but not the same level of affordability. So I don't really see the advantage to doing that, but they are looking at different options for the site, and it doesn't seem like there's anything imminent. It would appear there's nothing imminent in the next several months. So they continue to look at different options for that site.
And
Mark-
Go ahead. Who called?
Oh, Mark, I just wanted the number on Castle Avenue.
Castle. It was, you mean the address?
83 Castle.
Yes. It's right behind the, in fact, it's owned by Denardo. It's behind the strip center, commercial center where Town Fair Tire is.
I see, okay.
It's not a horrible site, but again, it's a little bit more density than we would typically see.
44 units is a lot.
44 units, yeah.
Okay, and then Carol Martin had talked about one on Burl Street.
Yeah, so I had that under new business, but I can cover it now. So there is, I think many of you might be familiar, the same neighborhood as the Castle Avenue. There's St. Anne-Marie's Parish, and they have a former convent building and school, which housed most recently the alternative high school program for the Board of Ed. Those both buildings are vacant, and the parish has made them available for development for sale. And there's been a number of folks who have taken a look at it, some of whom were thinking along the lines of another 830G set-aside development. And Carol has had some conversations with the parish about the potential acquisition of the property to do something a little bit more modest in scale, a couple dozen units, but most of which would be affordable. So the parish is looking for, they're trying to raise some money, and so Carol had come to you and to the other elected officials in town about potentially using some of the monies from the American Rescue Plan for the acquisition, and that did not go through. I think folks had other plans for it, but we have had conversations with our state legislative delegation about whether or not there might be state monies available. And as part of that effort, I did provide Carol with a very soft commitment letter that said that, yeah, we have a housing trust fund. At the time, it has $500,000 in it. And we would be happy to entertain an application, but it requires the review and approval of the Affordable Housing Committee and the Board of Selectmen. But we like your project, so good luck. And I think the idea behind those soft second letters or those soft commitment letters is then you try to get more firm commitments from other funders that might be able to leverage the dollars that you have available. So that's where things stand at the moment. We're attempting to raise some monies, hopefully through the state, that would allow them to acquire the property. But it seems like a good project. Carol did meet with the first select woman and planning director, and and also our state delegation told them of her plans, and I think there's generally support for what she's proposing for that site.
And is she looking to get the school or the school and the convent?
Yes, both sides.
The convent across the street, right?
The convent across the street. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a small, dead end road.
Yeah.
Kind of goes
It's a,
up.
it's a
up and up.
perfect location for doing something like that. I know those properties very well. I had very, very dear friends that lived in the convent, nuns, obviously.
Mhm.
And so I've been in there many times. And would they be tearing that down, do you think?
Yeah, I think the buildings are more or less functionally obsolete. So I think their intent would be to tear them down and build something kind of two-story, modest in scale, maybe townhome style development that would. And the number she was talking about was roughly 24. So it seemed like it would be compatible with the area and the lot size. So. Yeah, it seems like a good potential project. It's she's looking for some dollars to tie up the property. She may come back at some point to us, but she's going to certainly make some inquiries as to what the state might have available to assist with that.
I hope that she's spoken to the neighborhood or the RTM reps. It's always good to get some.
Yeah, I agree.
Local
I think, if you can get at least an option on the property, then you can start having those conversations. But I agree with Helene. I think it's a great site, certainly better than, I've heard of a few other developers who have their eyes on this property and we're looking to do something far more intensive for the site. So not nearly as affordable. So, I think Carol, she'll do it right. She'll have, more affordable units as a result. So I think it's a good fit. Potentially.
Mark, can I ask you a question? Is that going to be all are they proposing all affordable housing or mixed use?
Mostly, because I think what happens is that I think she explained this before. Usually she finances the projects through low-income housing tax credits. And so you get better points in the allocation scheme if there's some market rate units as part of that. So, but it tends to be like 80-20, 80% affordable, 20% market rate. And some of those are more, more affordable in terms of being targeted to very low income folks. So it is a mixed income type development, which generally is a good thing. But I think that partly she does that because it does better in terms of getting funding through the low income housing tax credit deal.
Right, but wouldn't it be more beneficial to go with a full affordable housing complex?
You'd have to run the
get
numbers. So
government
yeah,
funding?
you have to figure out a different way to then finance the project. So low income housing tax credits is certainly a really good tool, raises a lot of equity for these types of projects. And
Right, but you're saying low income and affordable are two different things.
well, the low income housing tax credit is just the name of the program, and there's two different.
So it can be
components of it.
used
Yeah.
towards affordable.
Yes, exactly.
That was what I
I'm
was.
sorry.
wondering.
Sometimes I fall into
do
this
know
government
the
speak
difference, and I
thing.
was wondering how you're gonna,
Yeah.
flip flop that, but, okay, I'm just curious. I think it'd be a great idea. I love that place. And it sits off the road, and I don't think many of the neighbors would be opposed to it.
Well, the nice thing too, as Celine mentioned, you're working into the grade of the site. And so,
Right.
it goes
Well, I
uphill.
live right near there, so
And
I
so
go by
I think
it a lot.
you can do a lot and make it really nice, and it won't really impact anyone.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Just reminding me, would you have views of the sound from there? If you get up above the,
Well, you'd have to, it has to be very tall. No, I don't think so. You have to go up the hill a little bit more.
all right. So the moratorium, we still need about 43 points.
Yes. The good, we've seen some preliminary numbers from the census. My concern would have been that, the number of housing units in town increased significantly from 2010 to 2020. And then that would, the formula is based on 2% of the total number of housing units. But according to the numbers I've seen, the impact to the housing, to the moratorium would be 7 points. So it's not significant. There's certainly been an increase in the number of housing units, as you would expect, from 2010 to 2020, but it wasn't as much as I thought it might be. The number I saw for 2020 is 21,982 units, compared to 2010, which is 21,648 units. So that's like 300 something units the difference. And if you take 2% of that, it works out to 7 points. So it's not a huge change, which is a little bit of a relief for me. We've been working so hard trying to close this gap, and then to have the goalpost move further away was a little bit. I was getting a little demoralized. So I think we're still on track. We just need to get a couple more units across the finish line.
So just to be clear about the count, if you had 100 apartments in a structure, that would add the same kind of requirements on us as 100 single-family homes. Isn't
That's
that-
how I understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, so like that new development on Umpqua, even though it's inclusionary, it adds a lot to the bottom.
It does, but the thing is, whatever the 2020 number is, it's the 2020 number. So it's the numbers I've seen for 2020. Either they don't reflect those changes yet, or I'm not sure how they counted it, but
They wouldn't have been.
that's the count. So I'm not going to argue with it at this point.
Okay, good.
I will also say a little bit of, we have to file with the state, or we're supposed to file each year a list of, they ask us to review a list of deed restricted affordable properties. So they provide the appeals list, which is filed on the Department of Housing's website. And, we didn't get notice last year. I thought maybe because of the pandemic, that was why we didn't get notice, but they had the wrong email address for some reason, both for my office and the first selectwoman. So we never did file last year because they didn't follow up with us. So we have a bunch of new units to report. By my count, we have 67 units that we're adding into our affordable housing inventory. Not all of those obviously count towards moratorium points, but it's a nice boost to our numbers, although it doesn't quite get us as far as I would like, but it should increase our percentage of affordable somewhat.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments about the moratorium status report?
I have a question. I mean, does it get to a point where as we're getting closer, we start to make an application? I mean, we've spoken about that in the past, but I mean, as we're moving forward, does that become something that we need to think about, or?
Yeah, I have it on my list. I think 2021, I would anticipate are doing that. So I'm starting to put together the documents that we would need to support our application.
And then after the moratorium, we still need to move forward with like another 10%. When do the new units, so you get to a certain point, and then when do the new units that are created start to like we get credit for them.
You get credit for units
Oh.
that are built based on when they're issued a certificate of occupancy.
So you have to just keep building toward another.
Well, that's why I think this whole thing is a joke. I'm sorry.
No, I completely understand, but it just
yeah.
seems like you're chasing like another thing, and it's like, how do you get toward that other point?
I mean, I just don't think it's realistic that communities are going to get 10% of their housing stock. They're certainly not going to build their way out of it. I've said that from the get-go. I think that's ridiculous. But that was the tune that the former housing commissioner was singing when I met with her and asked her just, how do you define success here? Through a succession of successful moratorium applications, eventually you magically get to 10%. It hasn't happened. There's the same number of communities that are exempt from 830G as there was back in 1990 when the statute was passed. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give some effort here, because we do need affordable units. And, to the extent to which we can, buy ourselves some breathing room for a moratorium application, but by all means. The ultimate goal, or thinking that we're going to get to 10% through construction, seems to me, just unrealistic. At best,
I completely
at
agree
best
with you.
might be able to take existing housing stock and figure out a way to convert that to affordable, but I don't see how you do that without incentivizing people to do it.
No, I agree. It just seems like if you get to the moratorium, then what's the next thing? Like, it's almost unrealistic to get to a second point.
Well, there's a couple communities that have made a second application, but none, our size. I mean, it's a pretty big big lift to get to 433 points, as we know, because we've been at it for a while. It's not like we're not trying, but
And Fairfield has done a really good job. So
yeah, I think, there's other reasons why we need affordable housing to meet the needs of our people that live in town or might want to live in town. Those are things I think we should be focused on. It clearly, I'd rather have some control over how we do it, which is the point of, giving ourselves some breathing room under the moratorium and creating other mechanisms other than having people do it through an 830G application. That makes sense to me too.
no, it definitely does. It does give you an opportunity to say, you're right, given breathing room to say, okay, let's have control over what's going to happen. But
it's a temporary moratorium. You only get the benefit of
yes,
that
exactly.
for a short period of time.
And I think that fortunately or unfortunately, Fairfield is a really nice town with a lot of really good things going for it. And so developers will still come back and try to build here rather than going north.
I know one of the things that we want to talk to planning and zoning about is whether or not there are other tools in our toolbox that we haven't fully utilized that might provide an alternative path for developers who want to build mixed use or residential housing, more dense multifamily type housing like we've seen. Give them an alternative path as opposed to just relying upon the 830G. That would give us some better design oversight, as well as maybe less density than one might see through a conventional 830G application. But all that will require some effort to modify our existing regulations to provide for that. But that to me is a worthwhile conversation to have, to see if there is some other way that we can direct people to an alternative path as opposed to just relying upon a highly contentious 830G application.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay, moving on.
The main event.
244 Greenfield, can you share your screen?
I'm gonna try.
Sent everything out, but there's some pictures and maps and stuff that are.
Well, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is off the GIS system. So you can kind of see the lot that we're talking about. It's a very small, undersized, non-conforming lot. And if you were to pan over here, these are these units I'm highlighting are the existing owner-built sweat equity housing the town built back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. So it's right down the street from that. You can't see it, but there is a structure here. It's a very modest single-family home. Get a better picture in the appraisal report that I attached.
About 900 square feet.
Yeah, it's very, very small. There's an outbuilding, a shed that had some fire damage to it as well. How this came to our attention was the owner of this property and a development partner that he was working with had approached the town through the first select woman to inquire about the possibility of purchasing town-owned property to the rear, which is part of Tungus Hill Park. And, to make a long story short, the first select woman didn't think that was such a great idea. What he was planning to do was essentially buy town-owned property to the rear, knock down the existing housing and build, market rate housing on the site. But there was really no control mechanism. Once you sell the property, people can kind of do what they want. They could have done an 830G, for example, on the site if they wanted to. So she wasn't too keen on that idea, but she did ask or inquire of the property owner whether he would be willing to sell his property to the town if we were to then turn around and kind of do the same thing, but build affordable owner built affordable home ownership type housing like we did down the street. And he did express an interest in at least entertaining an offer for his property. And so we engaged in some negotiations and eventually came to an agreement as to price, which I think is a pretty generous offer given what we're buying, but it does work within the numbers and is much less than what he was initially seeking for the property. So we're proposing to buy this property for $232,000. It's subject to the approval of not only this board, but the Board of Selectmen and RTM. As to the Board of Selectmen has to approve also any proposed use of housing trust fund monies for the purchase, as well as the acquisition of town property. And RTM would have to approve the purchase of town property and would have to go through planning and zoning for their review under Connecticut General Statute 8-24. Anytime you sell or dispose or purchase property of the town by the town, that's subject to their review. In addition to that, I made the offer contingent upon the approval of the Parks and Rec Commission as to the use of a portion of the town property to the rear for purposes of creating affordable housing. So, we'd have to get the approval of Affordable Housing Committee, the Board of Selectmen, RTM, Planning and Zoning, and Parks and Rec. And if, assuming all those vote in favor, then we could close on this property before the end of the year. So if you were to sanction the use of housing trust fund monies to purchase the property, then I would next go to Parks and Rec Commission to get their approval to use the property. And my thought was I was more or less asking them to draw a straight line from this where this rear lot from the adjoining property, draw a line across that. And then we would have not just a potential building site for one or more duplexes here, but in the future, perhaps this owner might be interested in selling his also legal non-conforming lot, and then we might do something as part of a secondary phase. But that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Mark, how, in a typical month, how much money does the Housing Trust Fund take in from permit fees?
Well, we had initially projected that we were going to realize about $300,000 per year, and we've been closer to $500,000 a year in the first 3 years. So it's probably somewhere between those two numbers.
Mhm.
I based my initial projection conservatively based on looking at 10 years worth of his building permit activity. So 400,000 seems like somewhere halfway between that.
35,000 a month or so.
Yeah. This was not something that we were necessarily looking for, but the opportunity kind of presented itself, and it's a good area for this. And I think, again, it's a residence B zone, does allow for duplexes. I think you definitely can do one. I'm hoping and counting on the ability to do 2 duplex lots there, or get some approvals to do that. So we have 4 units as opposed to 2. It seems, and again, I'm looking to kind of duplicate what we did down the street, but dissimilar to that, that project was developed and managed and constructed by the town, and I would propose in this case to basically create a building lot and put it out to the development community and with certain parameters and say, this is what we're looking to do. This is our objective and our goal. How would you do it? And, if we made available the land, on a 1 year, essentially own the land and provide a $1 per year lease for 99 years, renewable type thing, so that we own the land in perpetuity.
So Mark, I'm looking at the tax record on this. It looks like this is a really small piece of property. I mean, I don't
It's
know.
tiny. Yeah, it's
Like
about 2,000 square feet.
0.06.
Yep.
So are you saying even without getting this land from the town, we could at the very least put 2 duplexes on this?
No, we could not without
Okay.
the Parks and Rec Commission giving approval. That's why I said the purchase would have to be contingent upon their blessing that plan.
Okay.
I mean, then I did talk to the Parks and Rec director, and he indicated that he didn't see any issue with that because it's not being used. It's a buffer. It's not being used for any active recreational purpose. It doesn't really take away from the park. Unfortunately, what we hear is that there's some other types of activities that perhaps aren't so great happening in this area. So, his thinking was he didn't see an issue with the Parks and Rec Commission sanctioning that, similar to what they did for Greenfield Comments, the half-acre pocket park that they, in essence, donated to the town so we could build 10 units of senior affordable housing there.
And what is that building to the right?
This one,
Yeah.
that's a daycare facility.
Okay.
It's commercial. And then this is a parking lot for the former Kohl's. So now, this is owned by the owner of this property with the Aldis and Floor and Decor. So, again, I think this is a waste.
Yeah, it is.
And, I've talked to the owner and said, now, if we were to modify our parking regulations such that we don't require such excess parking for these larger retail developments, maybe, would you be interested in developing the site? Again, I think this might be another opportunity to create some affordable housing at some point.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely an opportunity. There's no way that Floor and Decor and Aldi's need that much parking, even for
They don't.
their trucks.
Yeah, we, you know, it really is apparent, you know, for larger retail centers that, you know, there's, it's overparked, you know, we require too much parking for those. It's
Absolutely.
like the Fairfield Shopping Center where Bob's is the
Yeah.
same thing. It's acres of asphalt, you know, that are hardly ever, you know, more than half full. So there's got to be a better, even if it's just grass, that would be better for the environment than asphalt.
Yeah, it would help with our runoff. It would help with rooster.
Yeah,
roof,
definitely.
all of that.
Mark, have you had any conversations with the people that own 254 Greenfield?
Not yet. I do intend to reach out to them and talk to them, and probably also the folks with the daycare.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but I do plan on, and I will also reach out to other stakeholders in the area just to make sure that they're aware of what we're proposing. I just don't want any surprises as we go through this process. I mean,
It'd be nice if 254 wanted to sell now.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. That would be great. Then you can have that whole area.
well, maybe, you know, maybe when I talk to them, that's what, maybe that's what where the conversation will lead. So
And 244, if we don't do anything more, we only have what we have. Can you build anything there as
No.
of right?
not, I mean,
Anything?
I've
Can you
had this
put a-
conversation with planning and zoning. I mean, there is a provision in the zoning regs that says permitted use is a use of the town, and we use that provision in building the 10-unit senior development on a half-acre parcel of land. We didn't, you know, we didn't go 830G. But we said, you know, this is a use of the town. Do you like the use? And they said it was fine. Now that under any other circumstance would not meet zoning. So, you know, a use of the town is a novel. It's an argument. It's I don't know if it's the best argument, but that I don't know if I would go through with it if we just had the little piece in front.
And if we just had the little piece in front, we could, I'm not suggesting this, but we could always renovate it and use it as is, flip it off to somebody.
Yeah, you could do 4 or 5 little teeny tiny houses.
I'm sure you can come up with a whole host of things you can do, but the zoning doesn't allow for it. We'd have to,
That was
again, we'd have to come
I
up with.
wasn't really serious about that.
I know, but you know, you can do a lot of different things. It's just our zoning doesn't permit it. And you know, the one response is, well, you can cure that through just making an 830G application. But you know, the town making an 830G application onto itself doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, I think we have to find a different way. I'd prefer to come in with something a little bit more conventional.
Can we afford it? Do we have enough money?
We have enough money, but this will largely deplete, you know, based on the cash basis. That's why I went through those numbers with you before. If we take 232 out of the 250 we have left, you know, that doesn't leave us all, you know, much left in the kitty. Now we'll get additional dollars coming in. So it'll replenish, but it'll take a little bit of time to do that. So, you know, that was the only thing I wanted to, you know, again, we do have the authority to recapitalize the fund by borrowing against, I guess, future earnings, taking the $1.5 million that we got authorization for. But I've been reluctant to fully utilize that because I don't have a clear path to repayment yet. So that would be my only.
And how quickly could you do that? If a good project came in, let's say.
We could do it
Carroll-
right. We could do it right now.
No, but would it take a month to do it, or 6 months, or 2 days?
Well, I think we can do it immediately because I think the town has the borrowing authority capacity and as regularly goes to market. So I don't see that as an issue.
Okay. Yeah. So the fact that we may not have any available cash in the fund.
Well, yeah, let me give you a hypothetical. I mean, if the property within the Navy housing development that is in foreclosure immediately goes to foreclosure by sale, and the bank is reluctant to do anything other than, do a foreclosure by sale, I think it would be, something we really want to take a hard look at and make an offer. So, that I don't know what the timing is of that. The bankruptcy filing has been discharged, which was holding the foreclosure in abeyance. So that would be the thing that I think would trigger. I want to come back to you with that because I think that's a real solid opportunity and we'd have to jump on it pretty quickly.
Which bank is that?
It's, I believe it is Bank of America.
Okay.
And I can have a conversation offline if you think you might have another way of talking to those folks.
Do you know Carol Heller?
I do not.
All right, we should talk.
Yeah, there's a name on, I was able to get some of the information out of the Superior Court docket and there's some contact. I did talk to the attorney. But I haven't made any, haven't been able to get a hold of somebody at the bank.
Okay, yeah. I'll give you a buzz. We'll talk about it. Okay. Maybe Carol could help. Okay. You need 232,000.
That's it. What do you think?
Can we negotiate 230, 225?
I already did that. I offered something less than that, obviously. I thought, he was a little bit higher once we got to a realistic number.
Yeah.
This is the number we settled at.
And
It's a good offer, but we're paying a little bit more than what I think it should be worth, but I can support it with the appraisal.
Do you need a motion from us and a second and a vote from all of us here tonight?
Yeah, I put in a motion in the agenda to consider an act upon a request to allocate 232 from the Housing Trust Fund, facilitate a purchase acquisition of 244 Greenfield Street for affordable housing. That, I wanted to make sure that was noted for the record. So that would be my proposed motion if somebody wants to make it.
Yeah, I'll make the motion and then if somebody seconds it, then it
yeah.
can be.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, moved and seconded.
thank you. I have a comment, first of all, or a question, Mark. This is to actually go to contract or just for an option?
We have a binder on it. And so this would be, and the binder is for this price, subject to the approval of the boards that I listed earlier.
All right, so if Parks says no, then the deal falls apart if you want it to.
Yep.
All right, and I'm going to assume it's 10% down or 15% down or something.
We put 1%.
1%?
1%.
Interesting.
Okay.
So Mark, we're not under any obligation to go to buy this property if the other boards
Correct.
don't approve it?
Correct.
Okay.
If they don't approve it, then there's no deal.
And the other party knows this.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, then, all those in favor, raise a hand and say A or aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Say nay. Any abstentions? It passes unanimously, Mark.
Okay, well, thank you all. I appreciate the vote of confidence in adding to my workload.
Sorry, Mark.
It's just, yeah, it's funny. You sometimes plan these things and things just go off in unintended areas. So yeah, opportunities come up. You got to be able to take advantage of them.
And, you know, in the big picture, for me, if when we went to the RTM with our report at the start of the year, we didn't have a whole lot to say.
Yeah.
When we go to them next year, we'll have a lot. to
Oh,
say.
you will. Yeah, for sure.
So, okay. That's all we have for tonight, other than a reminder that next Tuesday, correct? The
Tuesday.
19th?
Yep. I apologize to Joanne. That was the date that was given to me by planning and zoning. So,
You knew I was just gonna say something, right?
well, I knew you work.
Every single thing lately drops on a Tuesday or Thursday, and it is the two worst days of my life.
Yeah.
Those are 27-hour days, and it's so difficult to get away from what I do.
Well, it will be recorded.
I'll
so,
try.
Yeah.
I will
understand.
try.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Thank
Joanne.
you.
I'll second.
Second, Carrie.
Everybody jumped on that
Thank you
one.
all. And we'll see a bunch of you on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
All right. Thank you
Great,
all.
thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Night, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Night.